A Teacher's Story. Mrs. Thompson, a fifth-grade elementary teacher, stood in front of her class on the first day of school and told them a lie. She looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. But that wasn't true. Because there, sitting in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. She'd watched him the year before and saw how he didn't play well with the other children, that his clothes were always messy, that he smelled and badly needed a bath. It got to where Mrs. Thompson actually took delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen and putting a big F at the top. At school, Mrs. Thompson was required at the beginning of the year to review each child's past records. She put doing Teddy's off until the very last. But when she finally began to review his file, she was totally shocked by what she read. Teddy's first-grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He is a joy to be around." His second-grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother has a terminal illness, and life at home must be a struggle." His third-grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on Teddy. He tries to do his best, but his home life will soon affect him if steps aren't taken." And Teddy's fourth-grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and he sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson understood Teddy's problem, and she was thoroughly ashamed. The day before the holiday break, all her students brought her Christmas presents, wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in heavy brown paper from a grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson opened his gift and found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing, and a bottle of perfume just a quarter full. She put on the bracelet and dabbed some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smelled just like my mom used to." After he left, she cried for an hour. After that day, Mrs. Thompson began to give extra help to Teddy, and she watched him improve. His mind seemed to come alive. The more that she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class. And despite her lie that she would love all the children the same, Teddy became one of her favorites. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy saying that she was the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 6 years later, she got another note from Teddy. He had finished high school, third in his class, and said that she still was the best teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 4 years passed, and she got another letter saying that he'd stayed in school and would soon graduate from college with highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson again that she still was the most favorite teacher he ever had in his whole life. And then 4 more years passed, and yet another note came. Teddy wrote that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. His name now was a little longer. It was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. But the story doesn't end there. The year a little later, another letter arrived. Teddy wrote that he had met a girl and was going to be married. His father had died a couple of years ago, and, well, he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson would agree to sit in the place at the wedding usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson accepted, and she wore that bracelet, the one with several rhinestones missing, and she wore that perfume that Teddy remembered his mother used to wear. Dr. Stoddard whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, "No, Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." I'm Larry Johnson. Until next month, stay well.